Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. The FairTax is a proposal to reform the federal tax code of the United States. This new tax code would replace all federal income taxes with a single broad national consumption tax on retail sales. The FairTax would apply a tax once at the point of purchase of all new goods and services for personal consumption. The proposal also calls for a monthly payment to all family households of lawful U.S. residents as an advance rebate or a prebate of tax on purchases up to the poverty level. Congress first heard about fair tax legislation in 1999. Several congressional committees have heard testimony on a fair tax bill, but the proposal has never moved from committee to the floor. Our guest today, a proponent of the fair tax, is Earl Williamson. Mr. Williamson is the Executive Director of Missouri FairTax. He's a retired science and math teacher. He was an academic team coach for 20 years. He volunteered as a Hunter Education Instructor for the Missouri Department of Conservation for 31 years. And in 2007, he was the state champion school bus driver in the Missouri Association for Pupil Transportation competition. Earl Williamson, welcome to Conversation. Does that pretty much encapsulate what the fair tax is?
Yes, that does get it right down pretty well.
I have one question, and I'm sure you want to address this, but I'm just going to ask it straight out. Under this prebate rebate thing that you were talking about, I said in the intro, and I don't know the details of it, that up to a poverty level. So why don't you, when you're explaining the fair tax from your perspective of what it does, what it doesn't do, make sure you make me understand what the federal poverty level has to do with any of this.
Well,
but start from the beginning. Start from the beginning, just make sure you throw that in there.
Okay, I'll do the best I can. The fair tax was developed by 15 of the top economists from across the country, and I think that's an important thing for people to understand.
Not politicians.
Not politicians, not political parties, and certainly not K Street. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It was a program, it was a tax code that was supposed to be easy to understand, completely transparent. Everybody could see what was going on. And the beauty of it is because of how it was developed, it winds up being unique. And it's the first ever non-means tested progressive sales tax in the history of the world.
Now, when you say that, non-means tested, what does that mean? And progressive, what does that mean?
Okay, non-means tested means it does not matter if you are poor, if you are rich, if you're middle of the road, every citizen is treated the same way.
Okay.
Okay. Progressive. Under this tax code, the more you spend, the more you pay. If you were to keep your spending at poverty level, the effective tax rate on an individual would be $0. If you spent $1 million this month, your effective tax rate would be like 22.9 something percent.
Total, or just on the, I mean, is there like breaks in this tax that you're talking about? Like the income tax, you've got the 15% bracket, the 28%, whatever the heck the brackets are now.
This is the beauty of it. Because of the prebate, you don't have to worry about breaks or anything like that. It just flows naturally. The more you spend, the more you pay. But every citizen is untaxed up to the poverty level. Furthermore, because it gets rid of withholding and it gets rid of the FICA and funds that stuff directly through the sales tax, you keep 100% of your paycheck. at least on the federal side.
So the FairTax actually takes out not just the national income tax portion of your check, I mean, and gives it back to you. The part for Social Security and Medicare, what's called FICA, or what's now been renamed payroll taxes, are not being taken out of the check either.
It actually makes, for those programs, a better tax base. They're funded directly, and the Ponzi scheme that we currently have goes away. And you actually fund welfare. You actually fund Social Security directly.
You use the term Ponzi scheme. Why do you think that the current system is a Ponzi scheme? And by the way, you might want to start with what's a Ponzi scheme, and then and then explain to people why this is.
A Ponzi scheme is a shell game where you have a large base that quickly diminishes and the returns cease to come in. I guess that's the best way to put it. I'm not real good on that. I know what a Ponzi scheme is, and as
It's
you
a
have
scam.
it's a scam. As you have
Right.
fewer and fewer workers, then the fewer and fewer workers have to pay more and more and more to support the scheme. This funds it directly, puts it on a more secure base.
Now your thinking is, or I should say, those who think that the fair tax would be an honest replacement for the federal tax system, you believe that from these sales taxes that there would be derived enough money in order to pay for the U.S. military, to pay for all the functions that are currently being paid for by the income tax.
Okay. When the fair tax was developed, one of the conditions was it had to produce dollar for dollar the same amount of income to the federal government as is produced under the tax code today. Any tax that it replaces, it dollar for dollar replaces. It's not about not paying taxes. Unlike the current system where you hire somebody to cut a hole in the tax code so you don't have to pay and you stiff somebody else with the bill, everybody pays. But because it's a progressive sales tax, somebody who can spend $1 more than poverty level now pays taxes. So that first 23 cents on that $1 that is taken as tax comes out to a ridiculously small tax rate. I figured it up 5 years ago, and it was an effective rate of like 25 thousandths of a percent. That's an extremely small percent. Whereas if somebody can afford to drop $1 million, and we've got somebody thinking about dropping money maybe here to build a football stadium, you know, under this system, they wouldn't even pay the full 23% because they get back the prebate. It keeps it so it's like 22.999.
So, all right, I'm going to the grocery store. All right. Today I go to the grocery store and I buy the goods that are off the shelf, and the bill, you know, let's just in round numbers, $100. Okay, that means that I bought like, say, $92 worth of groceries, and then 8% sales tax was added onto that, and then I walk out.
It gets even worse than that.
Now, under the fair tax system, I have more money in my pocket because the federal government is not taking federal tax out of my check. I'm going to the store and I'm buying my $92 worth of groceries. Am I still paying the 8% state sales tax and then the tax on that you're describing on top of it? How do you perceive this as working?
Okay, first of all, when you describe state tax as opposed to federal tax, that's apples and oranges.
Right.
Are two separate things.
Right.
What you do on a state level, that's on you and the state. We're talking about the federal income tax. Second of all, when you buy your goods, your $100 worth of groceries at the store, and then you add the 8% on after that, we're not going to make it plus $100. Of that $100 that you spend now, national average of embedded taxes of anybody had anything to do with that, from the trucker that brought it and his taxes are paid out of it, to the farmer who grew it and his taxes are taken out of it, to the factory worker who packaged and processed all that. National average of embedded taxes is 22%. So what you're actually buying is $78 worth of groceries. You have $22 worth of tax in there that's hidden because corporations and businesses and anybody that pays taxes
Has to pass
has
along.
to pass that along. So, and then you add 8% tax, part of which is on $22 worth of tax that's hidden as well. So,
So explain to people how that's not in there anymore.
under the FairTax, competition drives out most, perhaps not all, but most of that 22%. And anybody who doubts competition, let me put it to you like this. A number of years ago, Congress forgot to renew one of the air travel taxes, and within 3 days, all the carriers had taken that amount of tax and dropped that out of their price. Now, some of them tried to keep it in there, but one carrier immediately dropped it because they needed the market share. They wanted market share more than they wanted to line their pockets. And in the process of market share, of course, they lined their pockets. In the process, everybody else had to drop theirs to match because they were grabbing huge sections of market share.
The federal income tax has been in place now for, 102 years now, since I believe 1913 was when the income tax amendment to the Constitution was added. So people are used to paying income taxes. Why are you suggesting after 100 years that we switch from that system, which people are used to an entirely different system, which the FairTax proposes?
Well, I'm a lover of freedom, which is kind of an esoteric thing. Folks don't really understand that. And within living memory, nobody remembers not having an income tax. But our founding fathers did refuse such kind of taxation because they understood what it was. First of all, the income tax that we have, a heavily progressive income tax, is the second plank of the Communist Manifesto. It's a communist tax code, and it doesn't work for a free people. Here's why. And here's where we venture into some treacherous water. Folks need to listen carefully to the explanation here and come to their own conclusions. Okay? You take the guy or the gal in the 15% tax bracket. Okay? It's not the lowest income tax bracket, but in the current tax code, that's a lot of Americans are in this bracket. Mm-hmm. You make them pay the 7.5% FICA. Fold this over, because over 20% of their pay is taken before they ever see it. Now, the question I have to ask is, first of all, who owns your body? For me, mine is on loan from God. I'm to treat it well. I'm to do good things with it. Okay? I should do a better job of both, but for here and now, it's mine. Okay? And I should use it as I see fit. Second of all, who should own the fruits of your labor? Well, I'm of the opinion that if I work, I'm the one that should be paid. And the last question is, what is it called when you're denied the fruits of your own labor? Many people have given me different answers. Some say it's tyranny. Some people say, oh, it's theft. Somebody's stealing from me. You know, I work, I get paid, somebody comes along and just takes some of it without my say-so. That's stealing. I choose a significantly harsher term because back in the day in this country, we had people that would work from dawn to dusk. Someone else took the fruits of their labor. We fought a war to end that kind of behavior. And that is, in my opinion, the very essence of slavery itself. While it doesn't have whips and chains, it's still a tyranny on the individual. So let's come back to this guy. A fifth of what he's taken is taken before he ever sees it. How is this person anything more than an unpaid laborer for their own government? 1 out of every 5 minutes that they work. Any tax code that enslaves the citizen in any way is inherently evil, wrong, wicked. It's an anathema to a free people and something that is to be despised, done away with as soon as possible, especially when there are other ways to collect the taxes. If you have to enslave or trap or abuse your citizens to gain the taxes, something is wrong.
And how is FairTax, in your mind, different than this taking one of $5 that you earn?
Well, it's how it's taken. Because under the FairTax, this guy that's living on this right now, that's 100% of his take-home pay, excluding state and all that other stuff. If he can bring this home, that's like a 25% increase in take-home pay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, since the federal sales tax is only 23%, I can definitely cover that because I just took home a 25% increase in take-home pay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's just one way to look at it. A bigger way is I decide when I'm going to pay taxes based on what and where and how I spend. This encourages savings, which is something we desperately need in our economy. It would encourage investment because there's no tax on investment. Okay, the tax only comes one time on all new goods and services. That's when you purchase new goods and services. No tax on used goods. No tax on that used car, at least on the federal side. If you want to sell your home, no federal sales tax. An advantage if you're going to sell a used house? Yeah. Now some folks say, hey, what about my deduction for the mortgage? Well, that's part of what's either taken or not taken. If that's considered a whole loaf of bread, well, your mortgage deduction is just some slices of that bread. Under the FairTax, we're giving you the whole loaf, not just a few slices.
Mm-hmm.
So you get it all. And you're going to, it's just, this was developed by economists, and 15 of the top ones, and it was researched to the tune of over $22 million in research before this was ever finalized and proposed. Furthermore, the name FairTax itself actually came out of the study groups. When people were tested with this, they said, hey, this is fair. It treats everybody equally. It protects the truly poor and the lower middle class. You know, the more you spend, the more you pay. It taxes the illegitimate industries. You take the black market industry in this country, completely illegal. They don't file income tax because it's all illegal. Now, under the FairTax, because it's a sales tax, they're paying too. It's not just you and me that are playing by the rules. It changes the rules for everybody.
So, as I said in the introduction, this first appeared before a committee of the United States Congress in 1999. It is now 2015, so we've gone, 15, 16 years, and there's been no progress. Why do you think that Congress doesn't see enough value in this to actually act on it?
I'm going to be kind of harsh here. I apologize to anybody. This is how I see it. Okay, let's say I'm K Street lobbyist.
Explain what a K Street lobbyist for people that don't know what that means.
Big money lobbyists in Washington, D.C. When you lobby for your corporation, company, business, group, whatever, lobbying can take place in two ways. One, use my product, use my services, we're great, yay, rah, got no problem with that. That's salesmanship.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the other side. Mr. Politician, please put this loophole in the next bill that you can. It's a loophole for our special interest group, our corporation, our business, our whatever, and we'll stiff everybody else in the country. They'll have to make up the difference, but we're going to get a loophole that we're going to be able to use to our advantage. And to help you in your next election, we'll make sure that you get money, your party gets money, and
Well, when you say loophole, you mean that we're not going to pay tax or as much tax as we would if we were paying like everybody else.
Oh, sure.
Is that what you're saying?
Sure.
And that there has been, well, I guess, many, to be kind about, many of these loopholes have been carved out for various individuals, corporations, partnerships, so that they are paying a different tax rate than what people think of as the normal tax rate.
Why, sure. Absolutely.
And you don't like this because?
Well, first of all, can you say equal treatment under the law? Under this tax code, there is no such thing as equal treatment under the law. There's special this and special that. And the common citizen is anything but special, except as the workhorse to pay the freight for everybody else.
Mm-hmm. So again, you were going to say, why is it that Congress has not acted, not even brought it to the floor for a vote? I mean, it's only had committee hearings.
Okay, well, let's go back to the tax code that we currently have. It's a cash cow for political parties because the special interests line up to support those that are going to help them get these special interest loopholes through. You and I don't see them because they don't apply to you and I unless we qualify for you and I to do it. And it's a lousy way to run a business. I have an eye doctor that I use. He had to resurface his parking lot. Did he call the paver? No. Did he call the concrete man? No. He called his tax man to find out if there was a tax advantage for this or for that or anything like that. What a lousy way to run a business. Okay? That's one of the other things. What the FairTax does is it gets rid of the middleman. It gets rid of all corporate, all business taxes. Let me dispense this myth that corporations don't pay taxes. And I'm going to offend some people here too, and I apologize. But while 40% of the bottom line of businesses in Missouri, for example, go as taxes, they don't pay a penny. Where does all that money come from? It comes from the fact that they have to raise the cost on their goods and their services to you and me, the citizen, the taxpayer, so that they can collect these monies and pass them off. Ladies and gentlemen, corporations and businessmen are nothing more than tax collectors, unpaid tax collectors for the federal government and the state government. So, get rid of the middleman. Under the FairTax, business-to-business transactions are untaxed. Corporations and businesses are untaxed. That allows the cost of goods and services to drop like happened with the airline industry, which makes it easier for you to consume if you have 100% of your paycheck. Okay?
So you're saying that goods cost less because all the taxes that all the businessmen had to pay before the thing ever got to the shelf are subtracted from the product.
That's a big part of it.
And that the people who are working and then get a paycheck and the top number and the bottom number are very different. The top number is what they're going to get rather than the bottom number. And so they have more money. And so they have more buying power to buy goods that the prices are actually lower than they were before the process started.
Yeah, that would be a fair summation of it. Now, some people would say, well, they're going to put that 23% tax on there. It's going to be a little more. Well, okay, so let's say it's 10% more. You remember this guy? He's bringing home 25% more in terms of take-home pay. Mm-hmm. Okay. The neat thing about the FairTax is you decide when you're going to pay the taxes based on how much you spend. It's not how much you earn. Mm-hmm. So if you want to save your money instead of doing a lot of spending, you don't have to spend as much. And if you spend on used goods, you don't pay federal sales tax. It's only when you buy new goods and services that this comes into play.
I want to let you know we've got about 5 minutes left. So if there's an area that we haven't covered, I want to make sure in the next 5 minutes you get that in there.
Okay. Well, this is important because right now we're hurting in this country. The economy is a mess. The actual unemployment rate is over 11%. The jobs we have don't pay as well. They're not great. The FairTax addresses this stuff through the corporate stuff. And we have a real need for jobs. First of all, in terms of compliance, we as individuals, corporations, businesses spend hours preparing, trying to stay compliant, that comes to about $300 to $400 billion a year as a drag on the economy. If the FairTax were in place, that goes away. Now, I can't promise that that's jobs, but it makes sense that some of that would become jobs.
That CPA's job goes away too.
Actually, most CPAs, if they think about this, they're happier helping their clients grow wealth than to hide it from the IRS, and most CPAs that I've talked to admit that. It wouldn't hurt them, it'd give them more money to play with, and they don't have to play with the IRS, one of their favorite things. They really don't care for that. The cost of the IRS, under the FairTax, as opposed to the flat tax, which is a flat income tax, which keeps the IRS and reduces the cost by about 50%. The FairTax reduces by 90% the cost. And the money that is overseas, 15 trillion in assets, could begin to come home untaxed. Can you imagine what $3 trillion privately owned, privately invested would do for our economy right now?
Make things go better.
Yeah, and the Princeton study that was done asked the CEOs of the Fortune 500, what would it mean to your corporation or business if the United States did away with all corporate taxes and business taxes, and 20% of the CEOs answered, the year the United States does this, we will immediately move our corporate headquarters from wherever it is in the world to the United States. Now that's Fortune 500, we're talking not poor jobs here, these are great stuff. The other 80% said our next business expansion will be in the United States. Economists that hate this admit it'll work. The ones that love it say crazy things, but the middle of the roaders estimate that this would double the economy of the United States in 15 years. You will have to hide under a rock to avoid finding a decent job.
So in the last minute here, again, why is it Congress has not acted on this, even to the point of up or down vote?
The current tax structure allows for too much wealth and money to be played. K Street, the influence there is just huge, and it's almost prohibitive. But we're working at it.
Right. Well, it's an interesting concept. I'm hoping that people who are listening to us have, caught on to what you're saying. If you were to address the people who are watching directly right now, what would you say that they should be doing? Give in about next 30 seconds. Look right at them and tell them, this is what I'd like you to do.
The first thing I'd like you to do is not necessarily trust what comes out of my mouth, but find out for yourself. Go to FairTax, one word, FairTax.org. You can also go to fairtaxnation.com. Both of these sites will provide a lot of information. You can also contact me or others regarding the FairTax. We have people in most areas. We'll find a speaker for you. We'll come and explain it. I'll talk to you over the phone.
Good. That was very good. Thank you very much for being so concise. Appreciate your coming a long way to be with us today. It's much appreciated. Thanks.
The pleasure's mine.
And I've been speaking with Earl Williamson. He is the Executive Director of Missouri FairTax. He's had a lot of interesting things to say. Those of you who would like to hear this again, go to YouTube. Go to Conversation with Lee Presser and put in Earl Williamson. You'll find this show. We'll see you all next time.